You are what you eat. There's no doubt that you've heard that phrase before. We are everything that we put into our bodies. And you might understand that food is made up of macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fat. And therefore, you are some combination of the macronutrients that you consume on a daily basis. But if food nourishes your body, what nourishes your mind? What if the words The answer is words. So imagine that everything you say, or even the things that you think, is like food for your brain. Some words nourish you, and others can poison you. Some words nourish you, others can poison you. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Leviton, and I help high achievers just like you who feel stuck bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Traditional self-help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change, making it so easy it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I'll help you create habits, routines, and behaviors that stick for good, so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. Today, my guest is Kyle Smith. Kyle is a coach, a speaker, and a trainer who helps people rewrite their inner stories using leveraging the power of language to create sustainable change. In this conversation, as we talk through our chat, Kyle breaks down what he calls soft talk and why it keeps us stuck in indecision, how you can build confidence by microdosing decision making, and why decluttering your mental stories is the key to moving from a victim and why decluttering your mental stories is the key to moving out of victimhood. You'll also hear why the words you This is a powerful episode about clarity, confidence, and how to create the life you actually want. If you've ever felt trapped by indecision, like you're living in If you've ever felt trapped by indecision or old narratives, or like you're living a story that isn't really yours anymore, then this episode will show you how to break free. Please enjoy this conversation with Kyle. Smith. What do you mean when you say that words are the macronutrients of the mind?
So we have our physical body, and that is built up off of carbs, fats, and proteins. Those are the macronutrients that our body is built up off of. And the quality of what we feed ourselves, what we consume, is going to impact the quality of the body. So we consume information, we consume words, and all of these can reinforce, or they can have some sort of impact on our stories. And our stories being experiences, opinions, either past, present, future, stories that haunt, taunt, annoy, celebrate the wins. Then our ethereal, our brain, absorbs this information, absorbs these words. And the quality of our words, being an ethereal macronutrient of the mind, the quality of our thoughts. Better quality words, better quality thoughts. Shit quality words, shit quality thoughts. So when we're actually putting good stuff into our brains are going to start consuming it and reorganizing and reorientating the way that we perceive the world around us. Because how we see the world is through our subjective lens. So our thoughts are going to either reinforce the negative or the positive. It's unbiased. It's where we are focusing. And that's when our reticular activating system, our subconscious, is taking that information, and then in the part of the world that we don't perceive, that is perceived by our subconscious, our unconscious, the things that are not consciously there, what happens is it's going to, with the stories and the words, there's going to be the subconscious act of finding information to back up that opinion, that story, or that perception. And that's on autopilot. So if we're reckless and passive about our words and our word intake and how we use words, then, or what we say, what we think, and what we write, then what happens is we're going to just adopt unconsciously other people's stories, other people's opinions, other people's perceptions. Whoever's telling us the story of what a thing we experienced means to them could influence our meaning, because we haven't created our own meaning. So when we get better quality with the words, then we get better quality with thoughts.
I am so pumped to tell you about my partnership with My Body Tutor. My Body Tutor is the world's leading nutrition coaching platform that helps people find their healthy weight and keep it forever through sustainable habit change. If you listen to this show, you know that we do not suffer from a lack of information. Most people know what they need to change. The problem is actually sticking to it long enough to see results. When it comes to diet, exercise, and getting in shape, My Body Tutor solves this problem by giving you customized plans, one-on-one coaching, and daily accountability. As a bonus for you, they are offering $50 off your first month. What makes My Body Tutor so unique is they offer daily accountability with a real human coach. That's someone to check in with you, talk to, plan with, someone who can help you when things are going hard. It's not ChatGPT, it's not some algorithm. This is a real human. I know because I'm one of them. I have been working with My Body Tutor as one of their tutors since 2020. With so much nonsense and misinformation and just bad actors out in the health and wellness space, My Body Tutor is helping people the real way. They are changing lives. I've seen it firsthand, and I'm honored to be a part of it. Check out mybodytutor.com, where you can see hundreds of testimonials and reviews. And remember, listeners of this show get $50 off their first month. Just click the link in the show notes or go to mybodytutor.com and tell them Paul from Change Made Easy sent you in your intake questionnaire, and you'll automatically get a huge discount. On top of that, they offer a money-back, risk-free guarantee. So this is really a no-brainer. And like I said, I really do work for them. So if you've ever wanted to work with me personally, you can even request to have me as your body tutor. How cool would that be? Once again, just say Paul sent you and get $50 off your first month, start with no risk, and see how the power of a coach with daily accountability can literally change your life.
Makes a lot of sense. And I like what you said. If we allow ourselves to be reckless and passive with our words, we kind of lose control. And I love the analogy of the macronutrients. Anyone who listens to the show knows my background is in health and fitness and also in mindset. So I use fitness as an analogy a lot. I've never used that one specifically, but I really like it. But now continuing with that analogy, I'm right there with you. Proteins, carbs, fat, they're what make up our literal body. The food we eat, you are what you eat, as they say. So now if we're consuming information, we're consuming knowledge, you are what you consume via your eyes, via your ears. You are even the words that you use. To continue that analogy, if we want to go on a quote unquote diet, so to speak, to start to get this stuff in order, because it's something I've never paid attention to in the past, where do you start?
The easiest place to start is with soft talk and solid talk. And after explaining this, you're going to be able to see it mostly in your texts, because it's the first thing you're writing out. Now, soft talk is ambiguous, it's unclear. There is indecision. So an example of soft talk would be, I might be able to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I probably will make it to the party for 5 p.m. I should make it to the party for 5 p.m. I could make it to the party for 5 p.m. I kind of want to be at the party for 5 p.m. So on and so forth. There's ambiguity, there's no decision making. When we remove soft talk and we integrate solid talk, which is simply a removal of the soft talk. That's it. So it goes from I might be able to make it to the party for 5 p.m. to I'm going to be at the party for 5 p.m. or I'm not going to go tonight. Unless there is, of course, the situation where someone is truly indecisive, where they are wanting to make the decision, they just want to go and check it out, and it's sincere indecision. I think that that's totally cool. I believe that when we focus a lot more on our soft talk, when we're saying probablys, mights, coulds, shoulds, all those words, and all of us say it until we're aware of it. Because the first thing, similar to our nutrition, we want to gain awareness of what our intake is. So we gain awareness of the words that we're saying, so we get to think about our thinking. And so when we remove the soft talk and keep it as solid talk, what we're doing is we're microdosing decision making. And when we are able to make the small decisions, it contributes to our ability to make bigger decisions down the line, because we become more confident in our competence to decide what is in our best interest, and we trust ourselves because we know we can make a decision from it.
Yeah, man, I love that. We are definitely speaking the same language. I love everything you just said. Microdosing decision making. I wrote that down. The distinction of soft talk versus solid talk is so powerful. I'm very keen on this with myself, with my clients. Non-ambiguity, decisive words. You don't try. You do or you don't. That's Yoda. So my question is, in your experience or in your theory, however you want to break it down, why do people want to stay with soft talk, and why is it so hard for us to be decisive and to start using that more solid talk?
The first thing that the situation or the theme or the context that immediately came to mind is when we are using soft talk because we believe we're going to upset the person by making a decision to go or not go. So then the soft talk allows us that buffer to be able to keep that ambiguity so that we can cancel last minute. Another thing as well is when we remove soft talk, then what we aim to accomplish, the goals and the outcomes and the plan in order to get to the outcomes, it becomes more fixed. It's less ambient. There's more clarity and structure from point A to point B. And even if there's little ups and downs, which is to be anticipated, we're going to be able to go through that because we can make the decision to move forward ultimately.
Yeah. Well, as you're talking, as you said, people might stay, I don't want to say if I don't want to commit to something because I don't want to hurt the other person's feelings or something. I want to be able to back out. But as you're saying that, what it makes me think is that it's actually, I think, even more about shining that light on ourselves, where it's like, if I commit to something, that means, to your point, it actually does, it makes it better because now you have a direction, you know exactly where you're going. But that also means that you could fail, that you could not do the thing. And that is always, for all of us as humans, our deepest, darkest, most fear that we push back against the most. So when we leave that ambiguity, it's like, well, yeah, I might go, I might not. I'm going to try to stick to a diet. I'm going to start working on my business. It's like, that means that, like, yeah, I've committed to it almost, but if I don't do it, I never really committed to it. I'm giving myself that out in my brain. Whereas if I say I'm going to do this, come hell or high water, burn the boats, sink the ships, whatever else, whatever happens, I'm going to be there. I'm going to do this thing. It gives us a direction, but it also feels scary because it's something that we can fail at or something that we can be wrong at, which logically shouldn't be something that scares us, but obviously it is. So how do you start to help someone who's been stuck in that ambiguity forever when it comes to their own personal goals?
Oh, I like that. So I go through a process where the first phase is getting the participants unstuck. So anything that works as a cognitive anchor that's preventing them from progressing or practicing progress, try to remove as many of those as possible. Because it's not a lack of knowledge, because I do believe that we all know how to do the things to get to where we want to go. It's not a lack of knowledge. The difficulty is getting our brain to work along with our body and having those in sync. And so first we go into getting unstuck, and this is purposefully to declutter the mind in order to make room to throw the party. And then from there, we go into celebrating the wins. And this is where people celebrate themselves. They recognize that they are doing really well, because what I believe hinders progress is when folks are more focused on the gap rather than the gain. So if people are focusing on only the distance between where they are now and where they want to go, and they're not seeing the progress that they did today, yesterday, a month ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, then they're going to forget that they're so capable. And so it's the art of receiving a compliment. And I believe that it's internally and externally. Like, we can pat ourselves on the back for things that we've accomplished. However, it's a lot easier to do that when we declutter all of the themes and the stories that are preventing us from allowing us to congratulate ourselves. So then once those two aspects are done up, then we move into everything, for the most part, is decluttered enough where there's less physiological resistance to doing the thing. And so then it becomes creating targets, whatever the subjective individual wants to do, whatever their goal is. I go through a frame where it's a target, story, plan, or we can put it as focus, frame, floor. So where is it that we're going? And making that a statement in a sentence with more detail rather than less, with a date included, because our words, it's going to create a decision by making that. And we can adjust the date, of course. However, putting it down is really helpful. Then we go into the frame. That's how we're perceiving the experience. That's the story we're telling ourselves about the experience. So I like to be proactive in this and get someone to write a story, either past tense, present tense, or future tense, from accomplishing what they wanted and looking back to presently pursuing it and writing about that, or making their way towards it. And so when we have a story that's synced up with an emotion, that's synced up with a target that we actually want to do, because if someone doesn't want to actually do something, they're not going to do it. If they don't have the desirability for change and openness to explore and a willingness to test their pain threshold and go out of their comfort zone and into their capacity zone, then they're going to just have where they are at this moment, because we can only get what we want by becoming the person it takes to get it. And if we're not becoming that person, then we're never going to get it. We're only going to get what we've ever gotten. So then by the point of creating goals, we've already decluttered, we've already showed ourselves evidence that we are badasses. Now we get to add to that list of celebrating the wins and creating a structure that we enjoy in order to get to where we want to go. Yep.
I mean, it's a lot. A lot there. You're dropping some bombs right now, and I like it, Kyle. It's interesting. You said people don't do things that they don't want to do, and it seems so obvious. Or that to do or have something that you don't currently have, you have to do or become someone that you aren't currently, or something that you haven't done. And I phrase this as simple as, if you wanted to, you would. This is right. I wanted to go work out yesterday, but I didn't. Well, then you didn't want to that badly because you didn't. I really want to be investing more, but I just can't seem to save. Well, it's like, well, then you don't want to invest that much because you're spending money on the things that you say you don't want to do. So your actions illuminate your actual intentions. But what about the times where someone has a block with that story that you've been talking about? They're like, but I really do want to do the thing. It's just that I can't because of blank. So, you mentioned decluttering the mind. What does that actual step-by-step process look to start to break someone out of the story that's kept them stuck for so many years?
Oh, that's a good one. To add to that, I truly do believe that people want to do the things that they say they want to do. I believe that we do have an intuitive pull towards being awesome, and I believe that we've adopted stories that hinder that awesomeness. So when it comes to decluttering a story, if it's in a session, so using the context that you gave, if it was a session, I would ask, like, what is it they want to accomplish, because that's the outcome. And then I would ask them if they've tried it before. That way we have reference. We know what works and what doesn't work, what kind of works, what did work, like just information. And there's no right or wrong, it's just exploration. And so then if there is a particular theme, because people have story or themes with their stories. And I feel most folks can relate to this, where a friend of theirs or themselves have watched their friend date 10 different people, however they're technically the same person. So that's how stories work. So then we think, okay, so what's the thing? Oh, I feel this emotion. Okay, so what does that emotion come with? Have you ever experienced that emotion in your life outside of this? Oh yeah, I actually have. How far back does it go? I remember when I was 8 years old and I was trying to bring together the elementary crew, because if we finished our work early, we would be able to go outside in the playground to finish the day. And then I was rejected, which is actually a true story. That's actually a story of mine. And so with that, the theme would be rejection. So that would be the emotion. So what we would do is we go into that story, and then we do a 4-step process where the first step is we title it and write it down. We write it down conversationally, err on the side of more detail rather than less, and proper grammar and punctuation. Write it as if you're seeing it on a TV screen. You're not in it, you're seeing it. And then step 2 is we read it out loud. So there's 2 points of exposure as well. So when people read it out loud, they'll start to feel the emotions, and it'll impact their breathing. When we're breathing high and tight, we're good to fight. When we're breathing low and slow, we're good to flow. And so if we're keeping the air up in our chest and we're doing a read, we're reading faster because we want to get through it without feeling the feels. And so some folks will go a little bit quicker, and that's totally okay. Second point of exposure. Then we go into step 3, where we read it again, 30% slower, so 70% the average talking rate of an individual. That forces the connection between the brain and the body to allow for the opportunity to process unmetabolized emotions that are just lingering. We're actively participating in the processing of it. Unlike the physical body, where we're passive about it, we cut our finger and, well, we have a paper cut and it's just going to heal on its own. I think it's unfair to hold the same expectation and standard for the emotional body or the energetic body. Emotion, energy, and motion. And so we actively go into that to process the emotions. So when people are reading slower, there's no choice but to take a breath in. And then it sinks through. And then the tension of that story starts to alleviate. And it's almost like cracking the shell of the emotion, of the story. And then after that step, then we go into step 4, which is integrating read and breathe. So at the end of every sentence, so at every period, the occasional comma, and sometimes and, depending on the story, we insert our breath. So then we have a much slower rate of speech. And we're able to really clean up the gunk that the story's left over. This allows us to drop the intensity of the emotions in order for it to no longer be in the way of the gold. So the story works as the dragon that's guarding the gold. And rather than becoming a dragon slayer and trying to, because I believe that people have the desire, or many folks have the desire, to completely forget the experience ever happened. And I think that that's, unless there's like head injury or some other means of forgetting stuff, then maybe it'll work. However, I think that rather than slaying the dragon, we actually become a dragon rider. We train the dragon. We We have power over the dragon because the dragon no longer has power over us. The story is intimidating until we have processed the story, then it completely neutralizes. And when we go into those stories that hurt, haunt, taunt, and annoy, I like to play a language game when I'm working with folks where we put the gorilla on the table. If someone really wants to fast track their overall like process or their mindset and their mental fitness, then we go for the heaviest duty experience they've ever had, and whatever that could be. It could be any horrendous thing. And that, when we break down that, then we get more energy flowing, and what happens is it blocks out, it brushes out, it completely destroys any other buildup of stories or dams that's preventing that flow from flowing. So then it just becomes easier. It's just how willing is an individual to go into their darkest depths and unknown shadow in order to confront that dragon and be like, yo, I'm actually going to own you, and I'm going to get the gold too.
One, thank you for walking us through that with real, tangible, actual step by step. It's so powerful, as you said. It doesn't make it. It makes it easier, but still not easy because you still have to confront this stuff. I love what you said, that healing the emotion, the internal, however you want to phrase it, the mind, the soul is not passive, it's active. Our body heals passively. You don't have to do anything. You break your leg, you lay in bed for 2 months, your leg is healed. That's what our body works, but it does not work the same with trauma that we've experienced in our life. I would love, though, you mentioned from your own experience that rejection was your story from when you were young. What are one or two of the other stories that you've heard over and over, like the key themes that you work with people on the most?
That's a cool question. That is such a cool question. The core themes that I would say, you know what, this is an interesting one. The core themes with the folks that I'm working with, and I'm thinking percentage-wise, these are the majority of folks. And then I'll come up with some other themes too. So a majority of folks have developed themselves to a point where they know that they've crushed it, and then they don't know where to go after they've crushed it. So they're at the top of a mountain, to put a visual to it, they're at the top of a mountain, and they know that they want to go climb some more mountains. They just don't know which mountains or how to get there or how to evolve and develop past that point. So that's been really cool, because for folks that are that aware of themselves, or aware, like have that self-awareness, that conscientious awareness of where they are in their journey, and they are capable of recognizing those wins and that progress. So it's cleaning up the dust. It's going in and cleaning up the dust, and then priming the brain to really go into the future.
So I totally understand. I love the analogy or the picture of the person on top of the mountain who's like, well, is this all there is? Where do I go from here? Sometimes even climbing that mountain and realizing that that's not, you get to the top and that's not even what you thought it was going to be. It's that the old saying, if you spend so much time climbing a ladder and realize it's on the wrong wall. And that can be one experience. But I'm wondering, for the opposite side, for the people who are like, yeah, that would be nice to have crushed it and be on the top of the mountain, but I'm stuck down here at base camp and I can't even get started. Like, what's the story that's keeping people down there?
It would be the ones where folks are stuck in the suck. There have been, second up would be deaths in a variety of ways, whether it's like partner, friend. It could also be the death of their present identity. So if there's a story where we're working on evolving, then I get folks to do a thank you letter to their past self at whatever age that they believe that they did the best, or really went through something tough, and say thank you for that. And then when folks are stuck in the suck, when it's really tough, then it's a matter of, do they want to explore the stories as to why that they're presently stuck in the suck. So it could be a lack of inspiration. It could be a couple of stories that have been consciously or unconsciously adopted based off of other people's expectations. And what happens is we behave incongruent to ourselves, where we know what we want to do. However, we have those stories that other people have told us to believe. And so I think that folks can, if they can work themselves into feeling happy, or for feeling sad for no reason, they can go happy for no reason as well. If there's something in the past that's affecting the present, then diving into that story and doing the same process that I mentioned earlier would alleviate the intensity. So it would be the same frame, it would just be an openness to go into it.
Yeah, such a good point. If people can be sad for no reason, they can be happy for no reason too. And sometimes these things seem overly simplistic, and you can hear something like that and go, well, wouldn't that be nice? Or it must be nice. Or if that were only true, if I could just flip this off. And it's not to say that you can cure depression by deciding to, or that you can change your life, but that is where it starts. Everything starts with a decision to act. And I think a lot of this comes down to something people talk about a lot, especially these days, is what's been come to be known as the victim mentality. So I'm curious how you define that, first of all, and how you try to help people around it.
Totally. So the victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of other people's actions, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. So to maintain a victim mentality is to just keep maintaining the habitual thoughts that you had yesterday and the day before and the day before, because we remember, or we have about 60,000 plus habitual thoughts per day. And many of our thoughts are just simply recycled until there's new information in there. And so how I would actually work that is, that's the one reference point. And then there's also the victor mentality. It's the person that is actually creating what they want. Now, with those two references, then it comes down to the decision as to whether or not they want to pursue their inner rival or their inner role model. And so I have a character construction frame as well, where there's the primary, the rival, and the role model. Who I'm speaking to and who you're speaking to, these are our primary decision makers. These are the captains of the ship. And if we have that ambiguous language, then we're just mopping this poop deck. So then outside of that, then we have the rival and the role model. And the rival is the character in us, the quote-unquote devil or the dark wolf, that wants us to stay exactly as we are because we are comfortable in even if we're in the stuck and suck, folks can still be okay with that, because as long as someone's receiving something for being the way they are, they're going to maintain it. So it could be sympathy, it could be pity, it could be joy, it could be happiness. And so when we are okay with removing that and removing that comfort blanket or alleviating ourselves of a shame kink, then we can move into the victor mentality where we're able to pursue the things we want. And so it'll still come down to the degree of desire the person wants to change, and that's going to impact it the most. Because I've seen people do a complete identity shift within moments.
It all comes back around to the same stuff. And people who listen to this podcast know I say all the time, everything is the same. It all comes back down to the foundational, the words, the stuff that goes on between your ears. And this is why I was saying earlier that fitness people often end up at this place, because you realize there's I'm trying to help people get healthy. I'm trying to help people eat better. I'm trying to help people exercise more, and they're self-sabotaging at every turn. And it's because of everything that you're explaining with the stories and with the way that we talk to ourselves. And the word that gets thrown around a lot these days, that's almost cliche at this point, is mindset. And it's one of those things. It's like, well, it's not about your fitness. It's about your mindset. But it's one of those things. It's like, well, what really does that even mean? What is mindset? And how do we start to take control of it so we can be the victor rather than the victim?
Sweet. Yeah. With mindset, everybody seems to understand that it's important to develop the mindset. Oh, I'm just working on my mindset. I'm just healing my mindset. I'm looking for any external component that I can to develop my mindset rather than going internally. And mindset is ambiguous because it doesn't have a working definition that we can contrast with our behavior. It's not practical. So there is that ambiguity. We want better mindset, but what does that even mean? And so I define mindset as the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves or our opinion of ourselves. And so we can have a mindset where we have a higher opinion of ourselves and a lower opinion of ourselves. And when we understand where we are and to understand the cues that the person could have to say, oh, I know when I'm in a lesser state of self, then we can actually course correct and make a decision or a microdose decision in order to pivot the trajectory so we can develop that higher sense of self.
I definitely appreciate that. I like that definition a lot. And I get, it goes back to your point from the very beginning, right? We want to remove ambiguity. It's impossible to hit a goal that you can't aim for. This is the same in fitness, is the same in nutrition. Better, more, good. These goals never come true because it's like, what does it mean? You don't end up at a destination that you don't specifically set out for. Whenever you're leaving your house, the first thing you do is you put the address into your GPS. You don't just go, I'm going to go north and hope that I find my way there. We start with a specific intent in mind, and that's the best way to get there. So I love that you're bringing clarity around something like mindset, which is so watered down at this point. It can actually, I think, have a negative effect on people because they're like, oh, well, I just need to work on my mindset, but I don't know what mindset is. And then that leaves them more flustered than they started. So I really appreciate that, Kyle. What is the change that you want to see in the world?
The change I want to see in the world is to have a majority of folks that are persistently pursuing self-betterment, being a positive contribution to the human race, and being a sovereign savage servant, which is also my own personal mission. And I believe that when folks have that autonomy and they have that trust and they're not dependent on external factors in order to fulfill needs or desires, then they can have the whole world at their fingertips. And the way I like to think of it is with leverage, because I think of doing the simplest thing, even if it's boring, especially if it's boring, that's going to make progress. And so I look at, and Archimedes has a quote that's cool. It's, give me a fulcrum strong enough and a lever long enough and I can move the world. And I look at the paper as the fulcrum, and I look at the pen as the lever. And we can move the world with these words and stories of breath. And I believe that folks have an intuitive pull towards doing something awesome and creating an environment, a setting, experience, society where folks want to encourage that growth, encourage affirming how someone's awesome rather than affirming how someone's ill, and being able to crush it in whatever way. Because I believe that over time, as we develop ourselves, our problems become our passions, and we are able to help people that were in the same spot as us solve that maze quicker and actually have the key to get through it.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly where we're headed as a society, as a race, a human race, I would hope. My last question, Kyle, is the same question I ask all of my guests. If you had one action step that listeners can take right now today, as soon as this episode ends, as soon as they take their headphones out, to start making whatever change they're trying to make in their lives just a little bit easier, what would it be?
If it's for folks that have a lot of cognitive clutter, I would say write it down pen to paper. Some folks like to burn their stuff. I like to keep it because what that shows to me is that it's progress. It's just data-driven process. Every word is a piece of data. And so writing down the stories in the way that I said, where it's conversational, even if they only did step one of that 4-step process, that's doing more than a majority of the human beings on the planet. People keep the stories up in the head, and what happens is it's infinite. There's no ending, there's no middle, there's no beginning. It's just something that just swirls through in the vastness of our brain. When we take the story out and we title it and write it down conversationally as if we're viewing it, not as if we're experiencing it, because what this is going to do is we're pulling ourselves out of the experience so we see it. We become objectively aware of our subjective existence. And so when we pump out as many of those stories, and people will know, they'll feel a lightness. When people get those out of the way, then it becomes a lot easier to see if there's themes. It's easier to see if there's common denominators. It's easier to see whereabouts we can improve, even if it's in the smallest amount. We can see who we do and do not want to spend time with. We can figure out, do I really care about this? We can create our own meaning. And when we write down the stories and we apply a meaning, what does this story mean about me? What does this say about me? What happens is we get to impose our own story on the story. That way, we're not adopting another person's meaning of the story, which could hinder us. And if we don't create our own story, because technically, you don't have to associate any meaning with any story ever, and if we don't actively do that, then we're just going to passively accept another person's meaning. So it's good to get those ones in. So get it out of the head onto paper, ask what it means to you, and if there's any relevance to it in your life.
If you're working on changing your diet, exercise, or other habits around food and fitness, you have to check out My Body Tutor. My Body Tutor is the world's leading nutrition coaching platform that helps people find their healthy weight and keep it forever through sustainable habit change. And you know, as a listener of this show, that when it comes to creating change, it's all about sustainability and consistency. And when it comes to diet, exercise, and getting in shape, My Body Tutor solves the problem of consistency through one-on-one coaching, customized plans, and daily accountability. And as a bonus for you, they're offering $50 off your first month. But what really makes My Body Tutor so unique is they offer daily accountability with a real human coach. And I know because I'm one of them. I have been working with My Body Tutor since 2020. There's so much misinformation, so much nonsense out there in the health and wellness space, but not with My Body Tutor. My Body Tutor is the real deal. They are changing lives. I've seen it, I've been a part of it, and I'm honored to continue to grow with them. And you don't have to take my word for it. Check out mybodytutor.com, where you will see hundreds of testimonials and reviews. And as a special bonus, for listeners of this show, you will get $50 off your first month. Just click the link in the show notes or go to mybodytutor.com and tell them Paul from Change Made Easy sent you in your intake questionnaire, and you'll automatically get a huge discount. And remember, they offer a money-back, risk-free guarantee, so this is a no-brainer for you. And no joke, I really do work for them. So if you want to work with me personally, ask for Paul as your tutor. Once again, tell them Paul from Change Made Easy sent you for $50 off your first month. Start with no risk and see how the power of a coach with daily accountability can literally change your life.